McCain hates war. He hates every single war he lobbies in favor of, with such consistent fervor that his major foreign policy speech today included some of the same exact sentences he used back in 2001 to tell us how much he hated war in Afghanistan, too. Our third story in the countdown, he's seen a lot of wars to hate, and perhaps he will later regret beginning his speech by saying, quote, "When I was 5 years old, a car pulled up in front of our house in New London, Connecticut, and a Navy officer rolled down the window and shouted at my father that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor." The only way he could have reminded more voters more pungently that he is not a spring chicken is if he'd begun that speech with, "Abraham Lincoln told me." As the Huffington Post discovered, the way he feels about war today, of year 6 in Iraq, was in some passages exactly the way he felt about war in 2001. Quote, "The lives of a nation's finest patriots are sacrificed, innocent people suffer and die, commerce is disrupted, economies are damaged. Today,
the lives of a nation's finest patriots are sacrificed. Innocent people suffer and die. Commerce is disrupted. Economies are damaged."
Mr. McCain also offering nothing new on Afghanistan nor Pakistan, but pushing hard his idea for a group of friendly Western powers that he calls the the League of Democracies, to circumvent the UN, advancing American values, presumably those regrettable wars that McCain promises and loathes. One new thought today, less than 2 weeks after Mr. Bush, sitting safely in Washington, told U.S. troops in Afghanistan, quote, "I think it would be a fantastic experience to be on the front lines. It must be exciting for you, in some ways romantic." McCain, knowingly or otherwise, symbolically punched Mr. Bush in the back of the head.
Only a fool or a fraud sentimentalizes the merciless reality of war.
Thanks for giving us a choice. With me now, MSNBC political analyst Rachel Maddow, who has her own program every weeknight on Air America Radio. Good evening.
Hi, Keith.
What was the speech, especially in that one marvelous quote there, his first attempt to put some daylight between himself and George Bush on his third rail of Republican politics?
Well, I was hoping that it was. I thought that this was going to be some signal that I had been wrong in predicting that McCain was going to fully embrace Bush and run for the third Bush term in terms of the war. I mean, I personally would define myself as a war voter. I'm a person, as an American, I'm hoping that we are not going to get a presidential candidate who's promising a third Bush term in terms of the war. So when he threw out that insult up top, I was hopeful. I thought maybe I've been wrong all this time. Maybe he really is going to distance himself from Bush. But by the time we got to the argument that Iraq will be a pillar of stability and democracy in the Middle East because of our occupation there, then I was back to crying in my beer.
Yeah, it's turned out to be a pillar, but not of democracy, unfortunately. Last night we talked about this in the economic speech, which had no remedy for the economy or the current crisis in it. But foreign policy speech in which you offer no answers on Afghanistan or Pakistan, and not even all new, material you're recycling from 2001?
Yeah,
huh?
He's supposed to be the foreign policy, national security war guy, and there was literally not a single new proposal in this speech. That's a surprise. And the other thing that we've been talking about is his conflation of Al-Qaeda in Iran, and whether or not that's deliberate or whether that is something that he's been doing because he doesn't get it. And he, once again, tried to shade the distinctions between Iran and Al-Qaeda. He talked about the fall of the Shah and then immediately segued into talking about the threat from Islamic extremism, which of course is Republican code for the threat from Al-Qaeda in 9/11. It was, I was surprised that there was nothing new, but I was surprised that he's still pushing the Iran-Al-Qaeda thing.
And speaking of surprises, it is one thing to, as the old song went, which most of us know from hearing it in Woody Allen's movie Radio Days, if we know it at all, let's remember Pearl Harbor. But why remind voters who will be, again, reminded at this point by Democrats later? In the first sentence of your speech, why remind them? I remember before Pearl Harbor. Why do that? It seems to be just, is it, I don't know, I'll just answer the question without my insulting the man.
This is the best evidence we yet have that the Democrats have been hitting each other instead of hitting McCain. He's so comfortable, he's so relaxed, he's so out of the campaign vibe that he doesn't recognize that his age is going to be a liability. I mean, I half expected him to segue into talking about the economy and how he knows how to keep us out of the next Great Depression because he was there for the first one. It was really, he doesn't recognize this is a problem for him.
Yeah, or by buying more Depends or something like that. All right, the League of Democracies. You can disassociate yourself from that remark if you wish. The League of Democracies, maybe the League of Nations, to harken back to something that existed when he was born.
Exactly right.
We got Superman, Batman, Who else is in the League of Democracies? Green Lantern? Who else is in there?
Woodrow Wilson is definitely a candidate at this point, although his costume sucks compared to those other guys. John McCain said in this speech that he is a realist. He said, I'm an idealist, but I'm a realistic idealist. And then in the midst of the siege of Basra and the Iraqi National Civil Disobedience Campaign that is shutting down retail establishments all over the country on the orders of the warlord that controls Iraq's biggest militia, John McCain says, normal life is returning. Markets are open. Reconciliation is occurring. Presumably he means between the airstrikes.
Right.
This League of Nations idea, this eminently practical idea to restart the whole United Nations idea from this apogee that we're out of our international influence, right? Who's going to go along with that? I mean, Palau maybe, but the idea that this is his realistic approach to rejuvenating America's leadership place in the world is ridiculous. Well,
there's a couple of clowns in the Canadian headquarters in Ottawa who may be able to join Mr. McCain in this, but other than that, you're right. We're at Palau and us.
Poland, don't forget Poland.
Not at the moment. They're mad at us too. Rachel Maddow of Air America and MSNBC. Great thanks.